Beyond Oasis, huh? Kind of sounds like it's already halfway through the story anyways. Hmm. Okay, Beyond Oasis. The second game that I have played through and beaten on my newly acquired Mega EverDrive Pro. Gotta get my money's worth out of that one, that's for sure. $412. Good God, good God. Whatever, you get what you pay for. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've already said this, but I find that the Mega EverDrive Pro, while I truly support Crix and all his good work and what's going on overseas, unfortunately, I gotta say the Med Pro, I'll just call it that from now on. The Med Pro, I've always seen it as sort of a somewhat less functional Mega SD, because I've just found that the functionality of the in-game menu and the Game Genie code subsequently are rather hit and miss, let's say, especially when you try to run translations or ROM hacks on the Med Pro. But so that's sort of the reason why I played the original and not the translation that's released on romhacking.com. Simply because, from what I've played of the translation, I think that it's kind of inferior. It blows my mind that all the people who are, let me come right out and say this. I am very, very thankful and gracious for all the work that you've done. Thank you so much for that. You enrich our lives and make them all the better for it. Absolutely. You give us extra content, to play on our ancient systems and everything. Much appreciated. But it blows my mind because it's like I can't tell you how many times I've perused ROM hacking throughout the years of me emulating in classic gaming, and all that I see across ROM hacking in every translation scene is, look at this retranslation of Phantasy Star 1. I'm just like, yeah, because we don't already have fucking 10 of those already, man. Really, man. Again, I said I'm appreciative for it, but I mean, it's kind of done to death. Like, how much, how, how much more can you translate the original script or something, right? I don't know, man. I mean, there are so many great games that are sitting behind language barriers that just need to be brought up and translated, right? It takes the longest time. What is it? Dragon Quest 4, I think, for the PlayStation, or maybe Dragon Quest 3. I don't know. I think there's because they made remakes of them, and I think that at one point it's only either Dragon Quest 3 or 4 that was playable in English on the NES or the Nintendo DS. But they did release an updated port to the PlayStation, but only in Japan. And I'm thinking, God, come on, guys! Why don't we, get on that sort of thing? But yeah, no. So I just think that these people's great and admirable talents are being squandered on inconsequential things, if you ask me. So, but I suppose I should get to the ramble, talk somewhat about the game here. So yeah, this is Beyond Oasis. I've heard a lot of people compare it to games like Secret of Mana. Not familiar enough with Secret of Mana, so I can't really say much about that. I would simply say that it's more so of an action platformer than Zelda: A Link to the Past. But so other than that, I think that it's a good game that stands on its own, sort of thing. I mean, they advertised it as being a huge 24 meg program. And then of course me thinking it's I'm sure I've talked about this before, but I just want to say it again. I gotta get this time allotted somehow, right? It's they talked about how I used to have a Clay Fighter box, at least for Super Nintendo, and they said that it was a huge, I think, 32 meg program. And when I first got into the emulation scene, I was just like, wow, why are these ROM files so tiny? It's it's only an eighth of the size, right? And then I'm just realizing, oh yeah, 4 megabytes ROM times 8 bits in a byte makes 4 megabytes into 32 megabits, right? I don't necessarily know why they did that. I mean, it's not like they had to maybe, I mean, like at the time that they were doing this, they didn't necessarily have CD-ROM technology well known to the masses, right? So it's not like everybody had 650 megabytes on an optical disc to rub up against, right? But so, and I mean, like, even floppy disks at the time, I mean, if it wasn't solid state hardware, then it usually would have been on a floppy disk. Uh, and, I mean, floppy disks were, well, I mean, the 5 1/4 inches could hold nary 360 kilobytes, and the 3.5 inch floppy A's that I have been ever so familiar with since grade school. I actually have a floppy drive for my computer. In fact, I have more computers in my collection that have floppy drives than don't. And one of those that has a floppy drive is my newest gaming PC. So, a little tidbit there. Yeah, no, so 3.5 inch floppy disks really only contained 1.44 megabytes. I mean, sometimes they contain 2 megabytes. I've seen those, and then later on they had zip disks, but that's entirely beside the point. So yeah, as to why they decided to say, oh, these are megs and not megabytes or anything, I mean, uh, maybe it was just like blast processing or something like that, or maybe it was just, and of course, multiple companies used that idea, but uh, put listing it in megabits instead of megabytes. So I don't know. Maybe it was just something to make it sound more complex and expansive than it actually was. But yeah, no. So beyond Oasis, boy, this is quite the ramble. So one thing that I've noticed is, I'll tell you this, if to the nobody who watches this video in any of my videos, but hey, you know, got to do something to keep you busy. I would watch, if I got stuck, I would watch certain playthroughs of this game. And I've noticed, like, when my footage that I view on my television and on my computer when I drag it off the disk and make it into an uploadable form, I've noticed that the colors, in my experience, on my Genesis, on my TV, and my monitor, are a great deal more vivid, honestly, right? Like, I don't know, man. Like, I would look at multiple different playthroughs, and all the colors just seem to be washed out and everything. Like, as I said, like, I don't think this is a color hack or anything. I don't even think that sort of thing exists, right? I mean, as I said, it probably wouldn't function with all the save states and cheat functions if it was on, at least on my Mega EverDrive Pro. Yeah, no, like, it just looked way better in my experience, right? And I'm just like, wow, it kind of looks like there's like half the colors on screen, like when it comes to everybody else's presentation of it. So, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm just seeing things, but who knows, right? So, again, I'll tell you this, I'm terrible at playing games. I love old video games, but I'm not good at playing them, so it's kind of a double-edged sword, because a lot of them have a lot of platforming mechanics that I just find confounding, and I just don't have the patience or eye-hand coordination to accomplish. But no, I would say that this game is pretty well put together. The graphics, I would say, are very nice. They're a lot better than something like Link to the Past. I mean, of course, you can't go into all the buildings and everything like that. I mean, that was something that they left out of the game. But I mean, it's essentially just time wasting, honestly, that sort of thing. Like, if there's nothing important in there, then there's really no reason to get in there. I mean, Sega in and of themselves, yeah, like, I know that this was made by Ancient, I think, but it just seems that when it came to Sega systems, nobody, like, when it came to RPGs and Sega systems, nobody could really get it perfectly right, you know? I mean, it's like they, like, the exploration aspect of this, of RPGs just never really came into its own on the Sega Genesis. That is, at least in the North American region. There could be multiple games that, as I said, are locked behind a language barrier, or may or may not have been translated, right? Like Brave Battle Saga, or Legend of Wukong, or Beggar Prince. Like, maybe those are more so like a regular Japanese-style console role-playing game. than this, but it doesn't try to lie about what it is. It's very much so a top-down action adventure sort of thing. It's got several RPG elements, and it is remarkable for the fact that the Genesis just had so few titles, especially like this in this region, right? So, like, let me tell you, I'll start here with the Game Genie cheats. Again, if it wasn't for the cheat function, I wouldn't have been able to beat this game. I would have had to have quit like after the first dungeon or something, honestly. So, very thankful for that, and especially the save states, because while you are able to save your game in the overworld at whatever time you want, the second you go inside anywhere, or especially a dungeon, you cannot use the in-game save feature. So, save states are an absolute must with this game, at least in my experience, and they would help anybody, to be honest, in a situation playing this game. But yeah, no, like I would say, the graphics are. Here I'm getting off topic again, right? Like, I'm watching the first video as I play this, just as you're watching it. You nobody who watches this. So the Game Genie codes, like I was gonna say, you think that I think I put this in the description of one of the videos. You think that using the Game Genie codes makes the game easy to play? Oh no, no, it doesn't. It just makes it so that I normally don't die, because I actually died. Did I? I think I actually did die at one point during this game. Yeah, so I had to reload that last save. Thankfully, I had save states there. But yeah, no, it's like there were so many times during the course of this game where I had to look up extra cheats and put them in, sometimes on camera, because I'm honest, honest to a T. I want you to see every single flaw that I had with this game, every single problem, right? I'm not gonna lie to you guys or anything like that. Just like a whole lot of other games, especially Crusader of Senti, it was a slog at certain times, right? It was definitely a slog. I was worried that, for example, I was using a cheat to have infinite weapons to turn like the Omega Sword and the Atomic Bow into infinite ammunition weapons, and I thought that it's like, oh shit, because like when I would pick up an orange, and then like I would use it, I'd have infinite items as well, right? But then if I dropped the item and then picked it back up, it would take up two separate inventory slots, and then those wouldn't go away. And then I'm just like, shit, am I not going to have enough inventory space for like game specific items? Which of course wasn't really necessarily like other than like the ring or the necklace and stuff like that, which is like you don't need to select that or use it at any point. But I was just like, damn, because I picked up the regular sword thinking that it was the Omega Sword, and I'm just like, fuck. Now I have one of my inventory weapon slots taken up by an infinite shitty sword, right? But no, they seemed that the programmers of this game had taken that into consideration, so you can just press start and drop it and then walk away from it, and then everything's fine. And I'm just like, oh, good God, thank God, because that I didn't want to have to get so far into the game and then realize that it's like, wow, it's going to be infinitely more difficult for me because I fucked it up with codes. And let me tell you, like, I thought that I did that several times with this game, right? Like, there was this one time in, now which one was it? I think you had Shade at the time, you had Ifrit and Ditto and everything like that, but it was the dungeon where you would have to fight like one of those big rock monsters at the end of it, and basically like in this temple, I'm not sure if it's like the fire temple or the forest temple or something like that. Sounds a lot like Ocarina of Time, honestly, but like I would watch video walkthroughs if I got stuck, and then I'd kind of copy their moves exactly, or as much as I could. And at one point I was just like, why is this guy striking all these torches? Like, I didn't have like a worded walkthrough open, a text walkthrough open, but I was like, why is this guy lighting all the torches? I mean, it's like, does he really think that he's going to summon Ifrit that often, right? well, and then, it's like I would just ignore what he was doing and then just get everything else, use the teleporter, go back into the main thing, and I'm just like, fuck, where's the boss? Why aren't the doors all closed and everything? It's like, did I fuck up the game's programming with all these codes and everything? Like, because I thought it was a problem with maybe the hover code that I would use to get over those floating platforms and everything. Like, let me fucking tell you, that's another thing that I would not have been able to beat this game with those fucking hovering platform segments, man. So I was just like, thank God that there's a walking on air code. And I thought that I maybe messed up the game's programming or continuity because it doesn't think that I actually landed on the ground inside the first vestibule of the temple. So, and I was just like, fuck, man. Like, and I think I reloaded a bunch of saves and then tried to take off a bunch of codes and everything. But then I realized, because like I started striking torches too and everything, right, to light them up, and I was just like, fuck, man. Like, are these torches necessary? Like, because I mean, to be honest, like, I've read through the instruction manual, and of course, it doesn't give you like a giant walkthrough of the game or anything. But I mean, it's like, why would you think that you would need to light all the torches and everything? I mean, that's just trial and error sort of thing. So that confused the shit out of me. Like, I thought I was going to have to start the game completely over again, right? So I was just so demoralized at that point. But then I'm just like, okay, I'm going to go through every single room, search for all the torches, and it turns out that yes, there was one torch that I didn't light, so it wasn't a problem with the codes. So, and then after I lit that torch, I was able to progress in the game. Thank God. Wow. So, that was certainly something there. Glad that it all worked out. But I mean, it's like, again, like, you wouldn't necessarily think of that yourself, and it kind of made me think, well, it's like, I can't just skip through things if in this video walkthrough if I'm stuck just because I think that they're boring or inconsequential, because turns out that the littlest thing is very, very important and needs to get done, right? Uh, there is a console code that you don't need a Game Genie for, that allows you to have like your entire inventory full and everything, all weapons and all quest items and all like foods and everything like that. And then I thought, I'm not going to use that. Like, essentially, the game is already beaten for you, right? Like, I mean, you. And I'm not even sure how it would work. Like, if you beat the temple and then you go to that floating cube and then you're supposed to obtain the spirit and everything. Like, what would work with it? Would it just like kind of say, okay, I get you, you get me now. You're my master, and it would just continue as normal as if you didn't have it before, but you still always had it. But I mean, it's like, I kind of wanted, a little bit of a challenge, even though I was cheating, right? Like, I wanted to see that my actions were worth something and not just basically have it be like the entire game be make work sort of thing, right? Because I already had everything, right? So that's good there. Yeah, no. These at certain points, like, I thought that my arrows weren't working because it's like I just couldn't seem to hit anything, right? And then at other times, because it wasn't obvious to me, like in one of the final bosses where like you're fighting the floating eyes, like I was like, oh man, what the hell is going on? Like, why is the guy in the video walkthrough that I'm using, why is he able to hurt him like in his open third eye and I'm not? I'm just like, oh shit, you have to use your armlet to fire an energy bolt at him, and that's what opens up his eye. I'm just like, oh shit, okay, you know what? That sort of thing is difficult for me to figure out, So there was a lot of frustration and tension there, and I guess I'll say it's like, yeah, the sprites. I'm just watching it play through now. He's attacking that ogre guy, gets a key. I guess I should say that's me, but. The sprites in this game are very good. I would say so far they're worlds better than anything I see on Nintendo, on at least the Super Nintendo, right? But a lot of them are just like palette swaps, like all those giant trolls that like pick you up and squeeze you and everything that he was just fighting. Like, there's like 4 different versions of them, and they just have different skin color and everything like that. So, but I would say that there's a good variation, somewhat, of enemies to fight and everything. the bosses are huge, right? Like especially the dragon and everything. That thing was. Oh, and the giant coelacanth looking snake that you have to run away from, which I was just like, damn, okay. Like I kept running away from it, and I'm just like, is the level just going to keep on going and keep on going? But no, you eventually get to the end with it, and I tried like everything, like throwing bombs and using my bow and attacking it, and I'm just like, oh, you're supposed to fucking hit the alien-esque Ridley Scott alien-esque face tongue that comes out of it, right? So I'm just like, oh, okay, all right, I get you now, right? But so yeah, no, and I'm not sure if you're like the king is supposed to be your father, and I'm not sure if he dies after the Agito armlet wearing person kills him, or maybe not. I don't know. Who turns out to be your older sister, which I mean, I guess was somewhat surprising. I mean, it's like I wasn't thinking about they said that it's like, oh, your older sister is missing and everything. It's like I wasn't thinking about that at the time. Like I thought she would just show up or something, or would have been a prisoner of whoever this was. But wow, sure got me. You M Night Shyamalan the hell out of me right there. But yeah, no, like I'm not sure if the king dies because it looks like he does. Like he gets attacked by the Agito guy, and um, your younger sister gets captured, but then she's safe, and then in the castle, your father looks like he collapses and dies. But I think that there's a small single panel cutscene at the end of the game where it looks like he's okay, uh, and maybe that's supposed to be your younger sister tending to him. But I'm not super sure about that, right? As you can see, this part right here, this really fucking got me here, right? Like as I said, I am not good at platforming, and I'm just like, what the hell is going on here, right? Like, see, again, right? Like, and oh my god, the fact that, they could have optimized this for the 6-button controller way better, to be honest, right? They could have used like sometimes the mode button can be used if you access a cheat for it, but like and sometimes you can use like mode and B to change your weapons, but only through swords. You can't cycle through bombs or arrows and everything, so that sucked, right? So, but the thing was that the jumping mechanic that really got me, right? That's the partially the thing that made me turn on the cheat to walk on air for the platforming segments. Um, I could not believe it, right? Like, the thing is, like, when you're in a platforming game, run, you want to run, and then you want to jump. So what do? You run, and then you jump, and to jump, you would expect to just press your finger on the button rather firmly because maybe it's just me, but you're kind of stressed when you do it because it's a giant leap of faith, right? But that's the thing, right? If you press down and hold the C button, which is supposed to be jump, you crouch. Like, really, guys? Like, honestly? Like, I mean, it's like, I know it was nice to have, like, the items menu and the weapons menu and everything, but I mean, it's like all that could have been negated or made redundant by using the mode button for sort of thing, like mode B to change your weapon, or mode X to open that up, and it's just like you could have used the extra 3 buttons on the controller to make it infinitely more conducive to an action adventure game, right? To a platformer, because it's like whenever I wanted to jump, I'd just crouch and then I'd fall off the cliff and down the precipice. That happens so many times I can't count, right? Yeah, no, so boss characters are pretty cool, but I mean it's not always well known where you hit them and everything, right? Or like Agito, the main boss at the end, it's just like, okay, I had to figure out that you needed to kill his little tentacle guys in order to be able to hit him and weaken him because, I guess that's a thing, right? Who really knows? But uh, yeah, no, it's an okay game, honestly. I'd probably rate it a little higher than Crusader of Senti. The graphics are a little better. I mean, it's like there are other platforming aspects that I didn't like because like you had to like like Ifrit. Oh my god, I can't believe I forgot about this Ifrit. Like, I once you get like the bombs, or which I wasn't aware of, or the Omega Sword, like it's not that big of a deal. But if you want to light fires before you have bombs, or if you don't have bombs, or the Omega Sword, like, my god, like Ifrit, like he just hovers around, he just does his own fucking thing, doesn't give a shit, right? Like, and you're constantly like wrestling with him. It's like, come over here, light this torch, you know. Like, so many times I had him blow his little sort of like 90-degree fire thing, and I'm just like, my god, like the torch is right fucking there. Like, you'd think that they'd give it a little bit better AI, or make it at least a little bit more forgiving, right? But it's like, it's like, I can't believe it. Like, there were several times where I'm just like, you know, I'm spending like 1 or 2 minutes, solid minutes, honestly, like trying to light this one fire, because Ifrit is just kind of moving in a square formation, moving in a square formation. So I move my character around and everything. Sometimes I walk in place, like I'm actively trying to get this fucking guy to come over here and get him at a proper angle and distance, to light these campfires or these torches, because if he's too far away, he can't do it. If he's too close, he can't do it. And then his stream of flames just goes past it and everything. Oh, geez, like, and of course, it's like once you like have bombs and the Omega Sword, like Ifrit, it essentially becomes for the most part redundant. Honestly, like I guess he's only good for like attacking random characters. Oh, and that was another thing, like those teleporting magicians and everything. Like at one point, like I enacted a code that basically. Enemies can't even come into contact with me. Like, they'd strike me, but it's like their attacks would go right through me and not even react against my character, rather than just hitting my character and not having my health go down. But that messed it up. Like, I think it was after. Maybe before the princess got rescued, but like I go into the place where they have teleporting magicians and everything. I think it was in a fortress, actually, like a dungeon, and you had to fight these four magicians that would appear in different locations and shoot energy balls at you and everything. And the infinite health code, or protection from most damage code that I was using, that was actually a problem. That actually caused a conflict, right? Because I would attack the magicians, and then they die, but then their cloaks, which would kind of collapse, like, you know, Obi-Wan Kenobi being struck down by Vader, their cloaks would collapse, and they would, you know, they would flicker and then disappear normally, right? But they wouldn't do that at this point, because the Game Genie code that I was using for protection from most attacks was having some sort of a conflict with how those characters at least function. So I would essentially find myself unable to continue the game, and I would literally need to reload a previous save state and take that code off, right? So that's the trials and tribulations of cheating, right? It's not all easy. It's not all easy, you know. Honestly, it's not just a walk in the park, right? There are times when you realize, wow, the code that I just typed in had a massive conflict with the software and how it functioned, and now I've essentially soft locked the game. So that was pretty alarming, but I got through it with lots of white in the knuckle anger and everything. But so yeah, like how he just jumped into the water. To me, that's not entirely obvious, right? Because I was thinking, well, maybe since the water is lighter over there, maybe I could jump in over there. But maybe I thought that I would just sink into the water that's darker because it's deeper and everything, and then I just show up flickering back on the land and everything, right? Back on the cliff where I just jumped off at. So, and yeah, this is a useless move. Let me fucking tell you, like, it's entirely fucking useless, this water tornado thing. It never worked out for me. It's like you'd think that it would go great against like fire enemies, like those flying snakes and stuff like that. But no, oh god, it was later in the game, and I'm trying to use Ditto's water tornado thing, water hurricane, whatever, and it's like it's striking it like once every 3 times that I cast it, and I'm just like it's doing like a quarter of his health each time. I mean, it's like it's water against fire. It should kill him in one hit, for God's sakes, right? And I guess I could have used like the her little water gun thing where she shoots a giant bubble, but I'm not even sure if that's an offensive technique. I thought that was just for putting out fires and everything. And let me tell you, sometimes you have to be pretty sure that you have the right. If you don't have like a calling mechanism, like a shade call or a bow call or a ditto call or a an Ifrit call, which I mean, as I said, it's like if you even have only like a bomb or something, just throw a bomb and then cast your spell on it, and you can summon him from the resulting explosion. But like I would have said, and I don't want to make the game too easy because then regular game players will hate it. But I mean, there should have been like very early on, there should have been calls for them, quote unquote, like available right from the get go. Honestly, because there were multiple times where I had to go back and I'm just like, well, shit, now I need shade, or now I need ditto, or this, that, and the other thing, right? Now I need the plant guy, a bow, to destroy this cage, and then I need to summon him away from myself because I can't walk over him and he's now impeding my path and everything like that. Like there should be a way, like maybe like instead of having like a bomb, a bigger bomb and then a hyper bomb, maybe you could have had like a bomb with fire, then like a water bomb or something. So it's like give Ali the ability to create whatever he needs to summon the spirit that he needs at the time, right? That would be most conducive, right? Because as I said multiple times, I found myself with either no spirit or the wrong spirit, and I'm just like, well, shit, you know. And sometimes I had to reload a save because I would forget how I got to the certain place and everything, or I wouldn't know necessarily where to go to get back there. And it's also I was just like, what the hell is this? Like, oh, okay, I have to crouch down in there, even though it looks like my character can fit through there, right? At least I think that's the problem, right? Like, who even knows? But yep, there you go. Right. Yeah, useless thing that is. Yeah, no, it's like you should have the ability to call the spirit whenever you want, right? That's at least the way I think it should be. Like if this game was released, say, 15 years in the future, right? I mean, it would kind of lead you by the hand and everything, but then again, as I said, I'm not good at video games, right? And this is actually pretty complex for me to figure out, right? So there's one of the palette swapped trolls again there. I think it's funny how the zombies turn into dust as you kill them with your either bomb, I would assume, or Omega sword, or Ifrit as well. Yeah. Now Ifrit, like I guess you could use his explosion technique, but then again, it's like you would need to conserve your magic and health points, right? So, and I was using some kind of messed up code to control my magic, right? Because at certain times it would keep going down, and then I would lose out on my spirit, and then he would de-summon, then I have to go summon him again. So I'm just like, well, damn, you know. And then the thing is with the Med Pro is that you have several slots for, I think you have 16 slots for Game Genie codes, right? And I wasn't aware of this at the time, but you can also do raw codes if you just press right on the directional pad, right? But again, to me, that's not obvious, right? And, you know, I have read the manual, but, you know, I forget things, right? You know, I'm not a smart man, right? So I'm constantly fighting not only against the game, but my own idiocy, right? But, so, like, it got to the point where I would still get hurt with certain attacks, or certain things that I would do would still waste my magic power. And at one point, like, I had to get rid of a lot of useful codes because the only Game Genie codes that I found would work perfectly, like 100% infinite health, 100% infinite magic in every single case. Each of those codes were like 7 and 5 lines long, respectively, right? So I had to get rid of a lot of codes because it's like, wow, you know, maybe there were 20 lines. I'm not sure, right? Because I had enough. I had as many lines as necessary for the master code and for the walking on air code and for the infinite weapon code. But I guess one thing I'll say about this game is that like you just seem to go right. Like again, like sometimes like I was using the video walkthrough and stuff. So maybe if I had talked to more villagers, I would have known exactly where I was going. But you just seem to go to places, right, and then get through them and fight a boss and get another spirit, right. Like the narrative doesn't seem to be super cohesive, right. Um, and again, like this silver armlet character, like he just calls you golden armlet, right. Uh, Again, it's like, of course, it turns out to be your older sister, but I mean, it's like not very present throughout the entire story, right? And again, it's not necessarily like a cinematic JRPG. It's more of an action adventure thing, right? So I guess I shouldn't give it that much grief for it, but yeah, it's like you just go here, do that, kill this boss, get the spirit, right? Then, of course, there are all those gems and everything, which I still don't know what they do. Honestly, I think it's only for bragging rights at the end of the game when you check your score. Well, I was the only one who played it on my cartridge, so... And, I'll be honest with you, I actually have this cartridge, the original cartridge, that I got probably back in 2008, back when classic games were actually affordable, and I spent like $3 on it. But nowadays, you look at it on eBay, and it's like a cartridge-only model with a fucking destroyed ass label is like $40 or $50 minimum. Yeah, that's exhausting sometimes, honestly, right? Like, I was thinking, like, even at the time, like 2008, 2010, it's like, yeah, Super Nintendo games are kind of expensive, but that won't happen to Genesis games. It just wasn't popular enough. Oh boy, buddy, you don't know. You got another thing coming. That's what I'd say to my former self. But yeah, no. I guess, yeah. I guess that's pretty much all I gotta say about this game. It's nice to look at. I would say it makes good use of the Genesis's limited color palette. I would say that it probably would have been better if they had expanded it more. Like shipped it on even a 4 megabyte or 32 megabit cartridge. Honestly, because I mean that was commonplace for the time, right? I mean they could have even made it better and ship it on a cartridge. Oh, yep, there you go, right here. Here's, yeah, I had to pause the DVD recording and reload a previous save and everything, because, yeah, unfortunately, the one thing that I'll say about the Med Pro compared to the Mega SD is that its save states and load states are faster. But I would say that the Mega SD's save states and load states, while taking much longer, maybe about 5 seconds to save and load, I would say that they are infinitely more stable. And perhaps, if it's possible, maybe an OS update could be released addressing that problem. I know it's never gonna be perfect and everything. I don't care about the skipping music or the droning tones like when you activate the in-game menu. That's fine. I understand that. Not a problem, right? But and again, as I said, like I'm able to beat these games on the Med Pro, given all of these shortcomings, because they don't happen super often, right? Like I think that it only happened like twice during my Crusader of Senti playthrough and twice during this Beyond Oasis playthrough, right? But yeah, no, it's like hopefully, I'm hopeful that they can streamline it a little more, because I would say like it's really not there yet, to be honest, right? And I would also ask if they could make an OS update allowing you to use a 6-button controller for the in-game shortcuts, right? It's funny because I mapped the in-game menu buttons to A and C, right? Because I thought that it would be more stable, because I thought that it's like if you summoned up the in-game menu while pressing any combination with start, that would pause the game, like especially in Crusader of Senti, it would pause the game. And I thought that loading the menu like that would confuse the game, like it's going from one mode of play to another, like gameplay to menu mode, and I thought that maybe that would be more volatile for the game to handle, too volatile for the game to handle, but I may or may not be right about that. Who knows, right? But so that's and the funny thing is that I didn't activate the code because I didn't have enough room for it to use B or to use mode to cancel the summon. So I would have to press A, B, and C all at once, and sometimes I wouldn't press A, B, and C all at once perfectly well, and I'd press A and C suddenly, and then that would activate the in-game menu, and I'm just like, huh, shit, didn't think about that, right? So that's just another thing. So as I was saying, with the 32 meg cartridge, you know what? Sega spread themselves too thin during the mid 90s, right? At one point, I mean, like the Master System was more so just in Europe or maybe even just Brazil at this point, right? But to be honest, Sega had the Master System, the Pico, the Game Gear, the Genesis, the CD, the 32X, and the Saturn, like all at once. It's like that's like 7 or 8 consoles at that point, right? It's like with Nintendo, you always knew what you were getting. You always knew what the next generation console was, and while of course like there were games like released for, you know, subsequently the NES and the SNES and the N64 and the GameCube and everything, you know, even a couple of years after the next generation console came out, like the Kirby's for NES and SNES, or like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, I think, for the N64. Like those were all released even after the next generation console had been around for a year or so. So, and I mean that's good and everything, right? They're fun games and everything, but like you always knew where you were going, right? Like once the N64 was released, yeah, you could maybe see a few more releases for the Super Nintendo, and you know, now that the Super Nintendo or like any console of that generation was so it was so advanced in its age that pretty much every programmer knew how to really maximize all of its peripherals and technology, right? Sometimes you'd get some of the best graphics at very least on those systems at that point. But yeah, no, as I said, you would always know what you were getting and where your purchases were going, right? But with Sega during the mid '90s, that wasn't the case, right? Because like they had the Genesis, right? Like, you know, the Nintendo had home console and portable console, the Game Boy. Now, if Sega just stuck with the Genesis and the Game Gear, everything, I think that it would have been a lot better for them, because like they wouldn't have invested all that time, money, energy, and resources into research and development for a lot of unsuccessful CD-ROM games or unsuccessful hardware and games for the 32X. But I'm not sure if I said this before, but the 32X should have been released in 1988-89. That's what the Genesis should have been. It should have been a consoleized 32X, because Sega has been inherently an arcade manufacturer. And the fact that they released a console, the Genesis, which I respect and like a lot of its games, not a problem with it, but the fact that they released a console that had such a limited color palette, such a poor sound generator, extremely low on-screen colors, and no scaling and rotation technology, it basically destroyed any port that Sega could have made for its arcade properties, right? So I mean, it's like, yeah, certainly like the 32X style hardware in 1988 or 89, certainly, and maybe it's like maybe they should have released it a few years later. You know, maybe they should have just kept on going with the Master System for longer than they did. But the Genesis, especially with its 3-button controller, that wasn't a next generation console. It really wasn't. It had only 2 more buttons than the Master System, and the same number of buttons for compared to the NES, right? So I mean, that was a huge ball drop on their part, right? They should have released it in the 32X in 88 or 89 or 90 with the 6-button control pad. That would have been a truly next-gen system, and it could have done all of their arcade games and all of their game ideas justice that they had. So I would have said, it's like, you know, like it seemed that the 32X especially, like it was doomed from the start. Like nobody in Japan had any faith in it, right? And the reason why I'm talking about it like this is just like, I see so many Genesis games released later in the Genesis's lifespan when the 32X was around, and I'm just like, well, here, Beyond Oasis, this could have been a 32X game. It could have been shipped on a larger cart, and it could have used Q-Sound technology like what Colibri on the 32X used. It could have benefited from the higher color palette and everything. It could have had like extra game elements like scaling and rotation and everything like that. it could have been really something to see, right? It's like maybe you could have released like what they did with Pure Solar, and I'm not sure if that idea even existed at the time, but you could have released a CD soundtrack with it if you didn't even want to use the Q sound portion of the 32X, which I would have thought would have been more than enough for it. I don't think I've ever used that ditto call right there. I don't think I've ever used it. Maybe it's, of course, like I didn't do like a completionist playthrough or anything like that, but never used that. But yeah, no. So it's like the reason for that whole 32X diatribe is because it's like, games like this or like Fantasy Star 4, those should have been on the 32X, right? I mean, it's like you should have given people literally a reason to buy that, right? And of course, but the Saturn was already out in Japan at that point, and Sega really shot themselves in the foot. My God, the bitter infighting of that company. But yeah, no. So I guess that's it. I've already talked for 45 minutes here, and I could just ramble on for a lot longer, but I won't waste nobody's time. So I guess that's it. Here's Beyond Oasis. I guess now that it's over and done with, and I never have to play it again, I guess I would say I enjoyed it. Maybe a C plus for me. Maybe a 70 out of 100, 7-0. So I guess that's it. Here's Beyond Oasis, my ramble. I've been Skwatter, and now I am out. Kaboom. Not a communist, guys.